Bourbon and Beyond this September in Louisville, Kentucky with Bruno Mars, The Killers, Black Keys, Brandi Carlile, plus Duran Duran, Billy Strings, Black Crowes, the Avett Brothers, Blondie, and so many more. Bourbon and Beyond, September 14th through 17th in Louisville, Kentucky. All passes on sale now at bourbonandbeyond.com.
Hello, everyone. My name is John Edwards. Zeke Baker is on assignment, but together we make the Dads Drink a Bourbon. Wherever you are, whatever time it is, thank you for making us part of your day. It is a very special day. This gentleman and I have talked back and forth probably for about a year, and I don't know what happened. I dropped the ball. I know I did at some point, but we were like, yeah, we should do an interview together. Yeah, we should. And then 6 months would pass, and it's like, hey, we're going to schedule that interview, and the holidays happened. All sorts of stuff happened. I'm finally so happy to have this man on the show, and that is Mike Montgomery from Blue Run Spirits. He is the CEO and founder and all that fun stuff. Mike, thank you for hanging on. Thank you for being patient with me, and welcome to Dad's Drink a Bourbon.
Oh, man, thanks for having me. And I got to tell you, I don't think it's your fault. I think I was probably the one who dropped the ball. But this is really exciting for me because I've wanted to do this, as you know, for a very long time. And it's feels like the big leagues here.
Oh, no, absolutely not. But, it's one of those things where I know we have a lot of mutual friends, and everybody was like, you should talk to Mike. And I'm like, yeah, I should talk to Mike. And then then I'd reach out, but it's fun. It wasn't you that dropped the ball. I promise. It was a very weird year, I think, for me last year. And I will say, I told you before we started recording, I wasn't going to talk about me, but I personally,
well, let's talk about you. Go for it.
I don't know how you feel. I mean, I'm turning this into a question, but at least for me, I feel like last year, where it was the quote unquote end of stuff, I feel like it went 0 to 60 in 4 seconds, like a Tesla. So the second everything was okay, I felt like I was no longer going 100% for the rest of the year. I was going 200% for the rest of the year in my day job. All the kids stuff has opened up again. Everything was just going, and I couldn't catch up. I don't know about you.
Full ludicrous mode is what that is. Yeah. So 2020, 2021 were, mostly forgettable years. I was just talking about that with someone the other day, and how there was such, obviously nobody likes a pandemic. Nobody likes the full shutdown and the change in life, but there's also a change in lifestyle. If we can pull some positives out of COVID, it's the fact that we all got to slow down a little bit. Right? Maybe spend a little bit more quality time with our family than we usually do, because we're going, in a million different directions all the time. And then you're right. And then 2022 happened, and it was light your hair on fire. We're back at it, but we're not just back at it. We're going we're doubling our speed.
Yeah. We're making up for all the time that we slowed down.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And it's it's a pretty big start and stop. Although I do have to say, at least from the Blue Run perspective, no, pun intended, we've been running hard, since November, probably before that, but at least publicly since November of 2020.
Which it's really crazy how many brands and bourbon podcasts popped up in the middle of the pandemic. But, it was and you think about, I've talked to so many brands too, where it's they were working on stuff. I mean, obviously you popped your head up in November of 2020. You can't pop your head up in November of 2020 and not have been working on it since 2019 or earlier. Yeah. So
I wish we could have snapped our fingers like that and been it's go time. We're ready to roll. Sorry to interrupt your question, but what was it like? So, what we saw was that people were looking for something to do. And let me even back up further than that. We had a game plan, full game plan about how we were going to launch and what it was going to look like. And, it included backpacks full of bottles, walking through Manhattan,
Taste testing
and
people.
taste testing people, and a trunk load full of bottles in Louisville, and really get in front of people. The whole idea of liquid to lips, right?
Yeah.
And then the pandemic happened, and we're like, okay, we're gonna have to tear that up and figure out a new path forward. But the beauty for us was that we heard that there were a lot of brands out there that had delayed their launches. Right, they were pushing product launches because of the pandemic, and so it created this like perfect opening for us, where we were like, okay, everybody else has just cleared the field, right? It created this opening where it's like the left tackle just created this massive hole, and we just ran through it.
I mean, I want to take a step back and then take a step forward, because I think your marketing, one of the reasons I've wanted to talk to you for so long, is the way that you did launch, and your marketing was so different than what other people were doing. But I'm going to hold that for a second. Like, what did you do before Blue Run? What made you want to start a whiskey company?
I don't remember. I was in the political world. So
I'm sorry.
I know. Way back in the day, I actually worked for candidates and elected officials, and I got really sick of that, because it's quite a world full of narcissists and yeah, go ahead.
Funny enough, I was a poli-sci major, and I did my internships, and I was like, no, I'm good. I'm going to go get a job in radio and then tech. But like, I did my internships, and it was like, yeah, this isn't for me. I'm sorry.
I got to tell you then. So I went to the University of Washington, and when I was a sophomore, I was taking journalism classes because I wanted to be a TV sports anchor, right?
Yeah,
I wanted to do TV, right? I'm a Seattle kid. I wanted to do Seattle sports, and the University of Washington killed the major, and so I was interning at. I had interned at 2 different radio stations, 2 different TV stations. Like, this was the path, and they killed that. And so I needed to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. Right.
It's a good thing they killed it, because you wouldn't have been making a very good salary if you stayed. That's what killed it for me is a few years in the radio world. I was like, yeah, I got to go get a job in tech if I'm ever going to have a family.
There were similar thoughts. I didn't know I was going to go bald either.
Same. Right.
So like that happened, but like I just kind of fell into politics, and interestingly, there was no entry level sort of position. It was really at the highest levels almost immediately, and so I got a real glimpse into what that world looked like.
It's like you're Ryan Reynolds in Definitely Maybe, where like, he takes the job, and first day he's filling the toilet paper, and then he's getting $10,000 a seat functions at an event.
It really was like that, and it's funny because I was brought on the then governor's campaign as the number 3 fundraiser on his team, and within 3 months, the top 2 people had let go. And here's this kid fresh into politics who's running Northern California finance for the governor. And it's like, how'd that happen? Right. And so that kind of opened up a lot of different doors for me. It led me to my wife. I mean, things happen for a reason. And yet I knew that I couldn't work for candidates or elected officials anymore. It's difficult, right? They're difficult. It's high stress, high pressure. You're only as good as the last thing you've done, and there's a very short memory. It was a natural shift to start my my own public affairs company, which really was focused on utilizing political solutions for what I called business problems, and really taking that skill set and applying it mostly to challenges that tech companies were having in California,
which is fair.
Call it new economy stuff back in the day. And that was all well and fine, and life was good, and no real complaints other than the fact that clients suck, right? I quickly learned that there's no difference between a client and a candidate. A lot of people would say, "Oh, it's so awesome! You have your own company. It must be amazing." And I'd say, "No. What happened is I just got more bosses."
And there's always people there. There's going to be somebody who just is having a bad day and wants to feel better, and you're the vendor, so they can take it out on you, and then they feel better, they feel important, and telling you what to do. Telling the owner of a company what to do when you're a mid-level manager can really make somebody's day sometimes, and that sucks, unfortunately.
Something else. It's something else, isn't it? It was a sustainable career, but at the same time, I realized that there was more out there. And what I felt was happening was that I was coming up with what I thought were, and who knows, maybe they were good, maybe they're bad, but what I thought were really good creative solutions for these companies. And it's, as you know, it's not easy to come up with good ideas, right? Like, it's not just a free flowing fountain of brilliance all the time, right? Like, it takes thought and time and work. And so I was really pouring myself into their problems and coming up with what I thought were great ideas and solutions to the challenges they were facing. Ultimately, I came to the conclusion that it was high time for me to start figuring out how to apply some of my ideas to something that mattered more to me.
Not to cut you off for a second. I mean, there's so much to unpack out of this that I don't even think we've touched the surface on it. But it's like, number one, because I was, again, I said I wasn't going to talk about me, but it just turns out that we have a lot of similarities here. But I was a tech consultant, and the best solutions come from a partnership where you're allowed to fail, but you're also allowed to deliver tough messages to the client. And you need to be able to have a client where you're going to say, listen, I don't know the right answer right now, but we're going to sit in a room and we're going to whiteboard it for a whole day and we're going to figure it out. Or, hey, we're going to try this. It might suck. We're going to back it out. Like, there's so many things that could happen that way. But also, I think there's a feeling of you're giving your ideas to other people and they're making a lot of money off of it. At the same time, yes, are you making money in your business and what you're doing? 100%. But they're making more money off of what you're doing. And I'm sure somewhere in your brain, you're like, yes, I own this. And yes, it's successful. But like, I could be applying these ideas in my own life and doing something else.
Oh, so you said it better than I could. I was creating asset value for others. That was essentially my job, was creating asset value for others. Once the problem was solved, I was out, right?
Yeah, it's not like you get royalties off of their, their solution being better.
No, not at all. And so that's something that I did find frustrating. So that was kind of the beginning of what we'll call like pre-stage entrepreneurial itch. I need to figure out how to scratch that thing.
But it was, what are you going to scratch? Like, what is that industry that you are going to scratch?
Yeah. And I didn't know. And, it was trial and error. It was really trial and error for me. So yeah, what industry is that going to be? And, I tried a bunch of different things.
So give us some of your best failures.
So, it's funny to look back on some of these things because, like, I'll say that was my idea and somebody else is doing it. Well, if I didn't do it, it wasn't my idea, right? I could never actuate it. So one of these projects was called Dine and Dash, and this was pre mobile payments. Where you could walk into a restaurant. Usually, it was like you have to put your card down on the tray, and they take the tray back and they run it. And, the theory was we were going to revolutionize mobile payments in restaurants for small businesses. Turns out that there are a lot of other people who do that a lot better, and it's happening right now. But, we gave it a whirl for about a year before we threw in the towel and said, this just isn't going to work. So decent idea, massive fail. there was we went through a filing for a patent on a method of making CBD wine and spirits. And, the theory was I wasn't really interested in that aspect of the business, but I looked at that and thought there are a lot of people putting CBD in everything. It's moving so fast. Who's actually thinking about processes, scientific processes for mixing, these elements into drinks? And so we went through that process, wasted a bunch of money. The patent process is time consuming and expensive, and that failed. But ultimately, the next thing that came down the pike was a call from Jesse McKnight, who I would call a colleague at the time. He was the type of guy who could call me and say, "Hey, I got a crazy idea." And I'd call him and say, "I've got a crazy idea." And we'd both listen. And so one day, Jesse called me and said, "Somebody wants to sell me some barrels of bourbon. What should we do?" And I thought about it for a second. I said, "Drink them?" Right? Because we both love bourbon, but it never really occurred to me that, hey, there's something else out there, right? There's an opportunity out there. But when he said it, I heard a couple barrels of bourbon, and I thought, okay, that's not a business, so punt. But I couldn't get it out of my head. I just kept thinking about it like day and night. I'd wake up in the middle of the night and scribble things down. And finally, I called him one day and said, how many more barrels do you think you can get? Are they any good? And he said, "I don't know. I'll find out." "Why?" And I said, "Well, because I think we can do something here, right? I think we can actually take the skills and Jesse comes from the political world as well. We can take the political skills and apply them to a whole new industry in a way that these theories haven't been applied before." And so that was the genesis of Blue Run.
Which is kind of crazy. I mean, you're lucky because Jesse is from Kentucky and obviously kind of has that whole thing around there. And it's if you watch the Pappy heist on the Netflix one, what was it? The crazier thing about that is dude got busted for selling Pappy and he wasn't even selling it at secondary. This poor guy could have been making so much money off of that. But the bigger thing is just that there were barrels of turkey. It is, somebody's
in his front yard.
Yeah. Hey, I got a barrel of turkey. You want it? That type of stuff. Have I heard stories about people getting barrels from distilleries as payment for something where they just happen to get a barrel and nobody really questions where they got it from? But also nowadays it's with the NDPs the way they are. I think everybody's got a side gig in Kentucky as a broker. It's everybody's hey, I work at this distillery, but at night I also move barrels for this distillery.
It's crazy, right? It's you and I should go in the broker business, but it's definitely not oversaturated. Definitely not oversaturated. But yeah, the living in Los Angeles, and I remember I didn't grow up here, but I spent a lot of time here, I guess in the 90s. And, the idea of driving down the 405 freeway and seeing a van pull up next to you at, 65 miles an hour and open the doors and try to sell you speakers. That's what it felt like when Jesse said, "Hey, I can buy a couple barrels of bourbon." That's what it felt like. Some dude driving down the freeway at 65 miles an hour with the door of their van open saying, "Want to buy some speakers?" That's what it felt like.
Now,
right?
Do you think you were more open to it because you had tried the CBD thing? And if you hadn't kind of already been looking in the spirit side of things, already, do you think you would have entertained it less if you hadn't been?
It's a good question. I don't know the answer. I think that I was looking, and there were other ideas that got, that hit the cutting room floor that we didn't talk about tonight. And so I think I was thirsty for something new. I was really looking for something, and it just never occurred to me that one of the things that I like to drink most could actually be a path forward.
That's crazy. I mean, that's awesome. You get these barrels, and then you said, hey, can you get more? And he told you, probably came back and said, yeah, I can. So what do you want to do about it?
Yeah, exactly. And I wanted to modernize the look and feel of the bourbon industry. And that was the thesis for Blue Run from the start, was that if you look across the shelf and just in general, so many brands have tan labels with brown script writing. They're called old this or ancient that, and they kind of harken back to this yesteryear, right? Whether it's, a few decades ago or a few centuries ago. And, that's not necessarily what we were looking for. Jesse and I were looking for in a bourbon brand. I would argue that there aren't many brands out there today that really speak to me, and I think to who I believe I am as a person and what I believe my values are. And, my belief is that we live in this multicultural, diversifying world. This spirit is for everybody, right? But it doesn't always feel like it's for everybody, right? When you're looking at, an old dude smoking a cigar on a paper label, that's all well and fine, but that doesn't speak to kind of, I think, my generation or the generations, that are younger than me. And so we were looking for a way to really modernize the look and feel of what was out there in the marketplace.
Well, and I almost think like some of the most successful bottles for me that I'm seeing out there for newer brands are almost more minimalist than, everything that's got like, at least for me, I want to see the liquid inside. And what I appreciate with your packaging, it's yes, we'll talk about the butterfly and we'll talk about the metamorphosis of everything. But like when I see it on the shelf, it's something that is distinctive. I was actually having this conversation with someone the other day where there's also not a lot of brands with logos, right? So if you think of and we're going to talk about a little Forbes article that I really enjoy, that it talks about how Blue Run Spirits is sneakerizing the bourbon industry. But I bring it back to that because it's like the butterfly is almost like the Nike swoosh. There's brands out there. It's like, yeah, okay, like Old Number 7 is Jack. That the red wax is Makers. That the ribbon is going to be Beam. But there aren't like logos. And I'd say the only ones that you really see out there, Penelope has really, what they've done with their P has that's their Nike swoosh. And then the butterfly of Blue Run, to the point where like you can wear a hat that just has a butterfly on it. And if somebody has it on Facebook or Instagram or whatever, and you see it, you're like, oh, doesn't even say Blue Run on it, but I know that's Blue Run. And it's got to that point where the marketing, and I think that's what we were going to talk about, and I said I was saving it for, it's not only getting the whiskey, it's the way that you rolled it out, it's the way that you marketed it, it's how you targeted, reaching out to people individually, because I do want to touch on this because you said, hey, we don't have the money to pay to play like some people do. And we kind of talked about it at first. So it's like, okay, that means you are busting your butt and you're reaching out to people individually and you're sending handwritten notes and you're saying, hey, I'm going to send you a bottle. Will you please enjoy Blue Run? Tell me what you think and be honest.
Yep.
Sorry, I rambled and told a whole bunch of it, but now I want you to fill in the gaps.
I know it's awesome because I think you could do this without me. That's what I love. I think one of the biggest epiphanies I had before, in the formation of this company was picking up the phone and calling Devin McKinney from Nike. I don't know if you've heard this story before or not, but I was driving by a Supreme store on a rainy day and I saw 500 people waiting in line, because it was Thursday, and Thursdays are Supreme drop days. And the thought process there was, well, can we apply that to bourbon? Is there a way to do that? And the next call was to Devin to say, like, hey, what do you think you can do with a bottle? And then all of a sudden he comes up with this butterfly, this logo, this medallion idea. And I got to admit, I didn't see it immediately. I was like, I don't know. But that's the reason we brought Devin on, is because he can see these things. He's got like this X-ray vision into the future. That's a superpower that, I don't have that design element. All I knew is that I really wanted to be able to come up with the look and feel of a product that when you walked into a bar and you looked at the shelf, it was something that would pop, right? Something that's easy to pronounce, easy to order, and feels elevated for modern generations, I guess I should say. That's probably the best way to say it. And it's not that we're looking to cut out the octogenarian crowd, but I believe that people who are older than you and I, we're not discounting them at all. This is a big tent. The idea is this is bourbon for everyone, right? But, we believe that there's been this kind of belief that the American whiskey crowd is strictly defined, right? It is what it is. People who drink whiskey are people who drink whiskey, and you can't convert cognac drinkers or Scotch drinkers or rum or añejo tequila drinkers. There's a common thread through that, and it's the color of the liquid, right? And so, can we do that? That's part of what we're trying to do. Is we're trying to expand the world of people who bourbon appeals to.
And I mean, I think the cool thing is that none of the releases are the same, but the way that you've done the marketing of the packaging here and what Devin has done very, very well is it still has a similar aesthetic. So you're not going to get confused. The consumer does not get confused. It's very recognizable that when I pick this up, it's Blue Run. I know I got to look at the label to see, okay, is this the rye? Is this the high rye? Is this the 13-year whiskey? I mean, the label will tell me. But I find it funny. I've made the correlation between the sneaker world and the bourbon world for a lot of people. And I'm not trying to, like I told you before, this is not a gotcha show. I'm not trying to put you in hot water so I'll say it so you don't have to. For sneakers, the secondary market is a very real thing that like people expect secondary sales to happen. And I know what everybody's going to say is like, okay, yes, bourbon is a controlled substance, and that's why the secondary market is not right. I tend to disagree with people just because I've been around long enough to when like I remember the secondary market was a lot of cost and shipping groups where we helped each other out in different parts of the country get stuff that we couldn't get. I know that what it has evolved into now is not always fun, but there's a lot of people I met from those groups that are great drinkers that I enjoy hanging out with and sharing pours. But I think the difference between the sneaker community and I said that secondary thing, I mean, that is a difference, but the biggest difference between the sneaker community and the whiskey community is the sneaker community has all accepted how drops are going to go. Like they've accepted that, okay, Thursdays, it's a 500 person line outside Supreme, or like they know it's going to be a Yeezy raffle on Confirmed and it's going to either really suck or it's going to be good. And like, you're going to hate it or you're going to like it, but sometimes you'll like it and sometimes you'll hate it. And like, everybody's kind of okay with it. And they know that the Nike sneakers app is not the best app in the whole entire world, but everybody kind of is okay with it, right? The whiskey community is going to bitch about every single way that a drop happens, no matter what. And you don't have to say that. I'm not putting the hot water on you, but like,
no, I'm happy to address that also.
Like, but we could do it online. You could have an online release and people are going to complain because it's online and like somebody did bots, or you could do it at a distillery and then people are going to say, all right, the distillery messed up how you did it. Like, we're never going to be happy. And for that, I'm sorry.
Yeah, there's no way. And I'll admit, I will never be happy. There is no perfect way to do this. And we're trying, but like I'll admit, even people who like, strike it rich on our December releases, 12 days in a row. There are even complaints from the people who go 12 out of 12, right?
Well, because then the price is too high and then it's, the other stuff and, nothing is.
Yeah.
We like to find reasons to complain as a community about stuff. And I think that is actually kind of one of the fun things it's one of the crappy things about whiskey, but it's also one of the funny things about whiskey at the same time.
Well, I agree. And that's maybe why I fit right in. It is difficult, right? Because if you say, okay, we're going to do this via lottery. Let's say you win the lottery, people are going to be like, oh, well, they're friends, so, it was rigged. And it's like, man, we are not looking to rig anything. We're looking to make sure that the whole theory that our guiding principle is that we want to get as much of our whiskey into the hands of the people who want it. Period. We're not looking to deprive anyone. That's not the goal. That's not the aim. I do want to point out one other interesting stat that is a bit of an aside, but I did learn the other day that the number one sneaker retailer in America is Nike. Do you know the number two would be?
It's going to be something surprising. It's not going to be Adidas.
No. Number three, I believe, is Skechers. Number two, if this were an actual company, would be the Nike resale market.
Well, I mean, it is kind of crazy, though, because I find there's such a correlation between the sneaker game and whiskey. I mean, the only difference, again, is one is a controlled substance. But you think about all the stuff Buffalo Trace is doing with the chips and, how they're actually putting that into the bottle now. And yeah, they're testing it. It's not 100%, there yet. But you think about the controversy where, StockX decided to take off, the verification. And just what that means, because now you have, counterfeiting and it had been around, but now, counterfeiting in sneakers is a big thing. And StockX was where I would say probably one of the biggest reasons why the Nike resale market was number two.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I've made more purchases than my wife appreciates on StockX. I think it's a great market, but the parallel is, it's a difficult one because we don't want to be viewed as like, oh, people are buying Blue Run so that they can throw it onto the secondary as fast as possible.
I haven't seen it, just to be honest. I think the people that are getting it are really appreciative of it, and I'm not seeing it pop up a lot. I go on there to research kind of like what are the things that are popping lately, because it's just like in sneakers. If you want to know what's popping, you got to go to those resale apps and you're like, all right, what's the most value right now? What are people craving the most? It's like if Cactus Jacks come out and you see them at $2,000 on there, you're like, all right, I think that's what's hot right now. And not in a way of like, I don't think there are brands. I also think not being on secondary is not indicative of not being hot. I think it's like people know, especially with an NDP, and you have a limited amount of juice, that like if they get a bottle, there are some brands that people are just really appreciative and they sell well and they do well. Again, I mean, I see, and I keep saying it like you with them, but I see correlations like with Penelope. You don't see Penelope going up on secondary a lot too. They're also not putting out like a 13-year like you are, but I think that there are brands that people get and enjoy and they don't necessarily flip them, because I also think that there's loyalty to the brand and I think there's loyalty to the people. That's why I said before, I think the most successful NDPs out there right now, like the consumers are buying the people. I mean, yes, they're buying Blue Run because they like the butterfly, they like the pack, like they like all that stuff. But I also think they're sold on your team. And, a lot of people out there have a personal experience with you. And I think that says a lot about the brand. So I just really, one of the reasons I was so excited to talk to you tonight is because if you're going to take that time, I want to meet this guy. I want to know what's going on in his head. I want to know, because it is a lot of time. And yes, you're giving your money to Blue Run and you've invested in the brand. Time, you have kids, you have all this other stuff going on. That time is so valuable. But I also think it's the differentiator.
It is. And so people are investing in Blue Run and we are investing in the people. This is really it's a two-way street. This is straight out of Politics 101, which is personal contact. And maybe that's not, don't take that the wrong way, but like actual engagement is the best way to think about this, right? Now, we can't necessarily engage with people who buy a bottle at retail, right? We don't always know who those people are. But, John, it's hilarious because I'll get DMs or emails or text messages from people saying, here's a picture of my bottle and my receipt. and here's my address. Can you send me a note? That's awesome. There is no better feeling than the fact that somebody went out of their way and they spent their hard-earned money on a bottle of Blue Run, and they've seen that I write thank you notes and they want one. Politics, if I were the mayor or the governor or whomever, senator, making sure that you reach out to the people who support you and let them know how appreciative you are goes a long way. That's simply the theory, right? I appreciate every single person who's buying a bottle. You can't see this, but behind me, I've got probably, 500 envelopes that are awaiting letters to be written. It's not some sort of factory, assembly line process. These are like handwritten, thought out, and it takes time, like you say. I've got a family. I find more often than not that after they go to sleep, I'm up writing notes. And it's so amazing to be able to go through these envelopes and say, like, oh, I know who this is. This is so-and-so on Instagram. Or this person, I've been talking to them on Twitter. And we develop a relationship in a way that most brands can't do with their consumer base. That is, I think, part of the secret sauce that we've been able to apply that hasn't been seen otherwise.
I completely agree. I mean, I especially think for the brands, and you all are putting down new make, and I think that's important to, there is a plan, there is a long-term plan here. But especially for brands that are starting out as NDPs, it is what is that differentiator? And the brands that are killing it right now are the brands that reach out and touch people. And like, I find it funny because I had a conversation with someone and they were talking about, how crappy the bigger distilleries' social media is. And I'm like, yeah, but Jim Beam doesn't need us. Like, they don't need anybody to. And the majority of brands, I say this with peace and love to all the other people that have podcasts and all that, like including ourselves, like, you don't need us. You have an Instagram. You can go live. You can reach out and touch people. It's like, yeah, do we have a really good conversation together? And does that help? Sure. But like, you could just fire up Instagram Live today and go have a conversation with all your people. It's like, you don't need the podcast. You don't need the other stuff. I love that you love doing them. So thank you very much. I mean,
I love it. And we do. And the thing is, we do need it. We do need it. People have a lot of choices out there, right? You've likely been to a liquor store recently.
Yes.
There are a lot of choices out there. So what is the incentive for someone to choose Blue Run over another brand? And I think we've got some differentiators. I think that the Jim Rutledge touch is impossible to recreate. We'll get into this later, I hope, with, Emerald Rye, which I can't stop pouring. It's Jim's first rye ever.
Yeah, I think we should talk about this. Jim Rutledge is approving all the barrels. He's doing, all the new make. He is very involved in Blue Run. I should also mention, because I know Mike has to put his kids to bed eventually. Mike sent 3 whiskeys my way. Just so you know, I'm not greedy. These are 2-ounce samples, and I asked specifically for 2-ounce samples because I know that he could send, multiple of these 2-ounce samples of a bottle out to people and share the wealth. So I hope he does that. So you sent me the Emerald Rye whiskey, the High Rye whiskey, which is the straight bourbon whiskey, but high rye. And then I'm assuming that's 36% rye for that one, right?
On the High Rye?
Yeah.
It's a 30% rye.
Oh, there you go. And then
yeah, so it really is a high rye on that one.
Reflection 1, which is a Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey. The proofs for the Emerald Rye was 116.7. The proof of the High Rye was 111. This Reflection is the lowest at 95 proof. But it's funny, I just talking about these whiskeys for a second, I feel like the Reflection had the most bold mouthfeel out of the 3, and it was the lowest proof.
Isn't that interesting?
That was super interesting to me.
It is completely unexpected. When that came out, what I told people is that I want to fill my garage with as many cases of that as I can. The other interesting comment that I have to make about the 3 samples that we sent you is that's all Jim Rutledge distillate. we're not talking about just straight, typical NDP source barrels. This is the magic of Jim Rutledge.
And this is the future of Blue Run, essentially.
Yes.
Got it.
We're really just scratching the surface now in terms of where we can go and what we have in store. Jim taught us early on that, age on a barrel is great, but there's no magic age. The magic age to Jim is when a barrel's ready, put it in a bottle. And so that's what we feel like we've done with these three. It'll be interesting to see what happens over time with all of these barrels as they continue to age. But we feel like this is a very, very good representation of where we're headed and why people should choose to jump on the Blue Run train now. We're creating some really fun, exciting releases that kind of run the gamut in terms of, like you say, mouthfeel, flavor, complexity, layers, and the like. There's something new and different. I find that people ask me, like, well, what are you drinking the most of right now? And it's kind of like, it depends on the day. Today, it just so happens to be a lot of Emerald. But I went through about a week this past week where it was high rye or nothing, right?
It's also like how you feel. And I love, people ask me all the time, what's your favorite whiskey? And I go, it depends on the time of the year. What temperature is it outside? Like, I don't want to be 100 degrees outside and be drinking 120 proof whiskey. Like, also, what day of the week is it? Because, hey, today's Wednesday. I'm not going to be I'm drinking high proof whiskey with you, but I did half ounce pours. I'm not going to necessarily go kill 120 proof whiskey. I got to work tomorrow. So
yeah, you can't put on the hazmat suit every day and every night. There's different things that people look for, but I got to tell you, I think you're right about reflection. And there's a story to reflection that I would love to, at least I can touch upon, perhaps not the extreme details, but these barrels were being stored at Castle and Key, and in 2020, I'd requested samples from a handful of different barrels. And what I got, unfortunately, in the mail was about 20 samples from the same barrel. And so this isn't what I asked for.
Oh, man.
Right? Like, this is great. We just drained a barrel. And so at the time, both myself and one of my other co-founders were going through some fairly scary personal times, health-related issues with family members. And so, I think these samples came through to me at like 126 proof or something like that. And I didn't have the time for that. And I didn't have the ability to even take down a 1 ounce pour at 124, 125, 126 proof. And so I started playing with this, and I'm not a blender. I know nothing about blending, right? All I know is that the people who do it are really good. So all I did was proof it down. I proofed it down fairly significantly, down to 95. And I was like, holy crap, what is this? And so in talking this through with our team, we wanted to create something with this product that looked back on the hard times that we had been going through. And so we came up with the idea of, it was the bourbon we were drinking to reflect upon the times that we were going through. And that's the idea behind reflection.
Oh man, that's heavy. That makes me want to get a bottle of it, because I can totally relate, to that in 2022. And yeah, that's heavy. I also find it interesting, and it's something that Zeke and I talk about on the show all the time. I appreciate you saying that you're not a blender and that you just proofed it down to 95, and that makes a whole lot of sense. I always find it funny when LTOs come out and they're right on the money of 95. Like, I'm like, but was 95.3, was that okay? Or was it just and it makes a lot of sense.
That was my favorite radio station.
95.3, the hits. But no, like it was one of those things where I always find like there are certain big brands, like big brands that will put out an LTO and it'll be at like 93 proof. And I'm just like, yeah, but like, did you just like put it at 93 and call it a day and just say like, we're phoning this one in, y'all. But at the same time, knowing that it was you, it makes it that much better. And I love the story that much more, that like, and also it's a big you're going to understand this, considering your past and what you've done. When it comes to Excel, I'm like, give me all the data and let me parse it down to what I need. But I would rather have more and then shrink it down than have less and like you can't go up. And that's how I feel like with whiskey. And the beautiful thing about it is like, you're like, listen, I proofed it down to where I wanted it to be. But if I didn't get it at 120 proof to begin with, I wouldn't have even had the flexibility to proof it down to where I wanted it to go.
I wouldn't have. And nor would I have done this if I had gotten what I'd asked for. So it's like, it's one of those happy accidents. But now we have not only Jim Rutledge, but we have Shaylin Gammon. And, these two are like two peas in a pod. They are exacting. Their noses and their palates are, divine. I don't know how they do it. I can do like the gross, I don't mean gross in a negative way, but like the gross flavors of vanilla, caramel, chocolate, right? But I can't get like summer cucumber.
Let me give you a big hint here too, though. Never try to get summer cucumber, because for the majority of us, right? Like we just need to flip it to, factory senses that we know. This is grandma's biscuits and gravy, or this is, like sometimes Zeke sometimes really like gets on a meat kick. For the longest time in the very beginning, it was kudzu syrup, things like that, like very things that only he would know.
Very obscure.
Yes. Right? But it made sense to him, right? Like, and sometimes it's a piece of juicy fruit gum or, something like that. But whatever, Werther's candy is a very, with the caramel that is in whiskey, so just don't feel like you need to go too crazy. Just find what works and like things that and say that, and people are going to be right there with you.
Yeah. Although I can tell you, we do have a release coming out soon with a tasting note that includes salted foie gras. And I'm so excited. I'm so excited about it. It's pretty incredible.
I saw pictures from the Bourbon Classic tonight, and there was cotton candy foie gras, and I was just wow. Oh man, like they went fancy. They went fancy.
I guess you can do anything, right?
Yeah.
I guess you can do anything. That actually sounds pretty good.
But all three of these from your own distillate, and sorry, not to cut you off.
Yeah,
right
go ahead.
All three of these from your own distillate, and obviously, I'm curious, what's the mash bill of the rye?
The Emerald?
Yeah.
It's I want to say 20-70-10.
Thank you. Because I like it a lot, and I currently have broken up with 95.5 rye. Like I'm sorry, I'm just not that into you. It's all the pine and mint and all that's kind of there, and wintergreen that just, I feel like if I wanted to drink a pine cone air freshener, I'd just drink a pine cone air freshener. And
you hop in an Uber.
Yeah. So I love more of a Kentucky rye and more of the, the corn in there and just some balance with it, that you get the spice, and yeah, you might get some mint and wintergreen and all that, but it's not going to overpower it. Yeah.
It's more of, I think our ryes in general are more of, the typical bourbon drinkers ryes.
Yeah.
I was never much of a rye fan until I had our golden rye. I don't know if you've had that, but if you haven't, we'll make sure that does happen. And
it's a great movie, great game for Nintendo 64 too.
Right?
Sorry, dad joke.
It's okay. I don't know if any, for all the dads, you're welcome. But rye was always this like difficult drink for me, where I almost felt like I needed a steak knife to get through it. And I don't always want a steak knife to drink my bourbon, right? I don't want to have to work that hard. It's like, it's like the reason that I don't eat a lot of, well, two reasons why I don't eat a lot of lobster or crab, super expensive. But the reason I don't like to eat lobster and crab is because I don't like working for my food.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's how I feel about my rye whiskey also. I don't want to work that hard for it, right? I want it to come to me more than me needing to attack it to get through it.
Well, it's the spice too, right? Like if it's too, I like the tingle, but I don't want, I'm at the point right now, at least me personally, and kind of what I like about these pours is that everything is so complex. You know, the stuff we're getting sent and we review things, and there's so many complex bourbons and there's just a lot going on. But when I'm by myself and I'm not quote unquote, you know, doing this for a hobby that doesn't pay me any money, I like to just have something that's an easy sipper and it goes down and it does the job and I don't have to think about it too much and it's just good. I appreciate these in the sense of like there's enough complexity that it keeps you happy, but it also just, these go down easy for what they are, and I appreciate that. You know, I definitely think that reflection surprised the hell out of me. I was like, all right, I'm going to like the high rye the most. You know, I really did like the high rye, but the reflection, that is a sleeper right there. You know, it comes in and you're just like, oh, damn. I was not expecting that.
It is a big sleeper, and it's like this is the magic of pairing Jim Rutledge with Shaylin Gammon, right? So Jim distilled these barrels. Shaylin selected the barrels to create that blend, and then she put it together, right? But I'll also tell you, there's going to be a Reflection 2 coming out later this year. If you look at the bottle, for those who have a bottle, you'll see a Roman numeral after Reflection. Right now it's a 1. And the idea is there will be iterations of Reflection. And they may deviate, right? You may get different proof points. You may get different flavor profiles. But the idea behind what we're trying to do with Reflection remains unchanged. This is like a personal ode to our challenges from 2020. And I hope people like it as much as you do and as much as I do, because it's imminently sippable, whether it's the dead of winter where there's a storm, you know, that's swirling the United States, or, you know, it's the 4th of July and it's 95 degrees outside. It's a bourbon for all seasons. And that's what I really, really like about it.
We probably need to get you on again to talk about the future of Blue Run and all the stuff that's going on. But what else should we be expecting this year? You know, you talk about Reflection 2. What else do you think is going to come out? Because Emerald Rye was only 189 barrels. It's already sold out, so that's gone. You know, we know that there are things that once you put them out there, they get snatched up pretty quickly. So what else should people be on the lookout for?
Yeah, well, it's a good lesson, isn't it? Right? Like get it while you can, and stock. You know, get a backup.
Yeah.
Also, because like, you know, I showed you earlier. I was drinking this Island Spice Cake bottle, and you know, you can see it's like what, a quarter. I've got like 3/4 of it left, and this is the bottle that I'm like hiding. You know, that when people come over, it's like, I don't know if I have that, because I want it to last. And this thing's even last me like a decade, because I'll never see it again. There is a lot of that going on. We actually have, we're going to have a couple different age stated products that I think people are really going to love. And, you know, there are a handful of those surprises, I guess I should say, that are on the way. We'll be doing the 12 days again. So, you know, year 1 we just called it the 12 days of bourbon. Year 2 was winter solstice. We'll see what year 3 is going to look like, but those are super hot bottles that go really fast. And, you know, you've probably seen them on Instagram. You know, the colors and the photos that people take really just pop. But what really pops is the bourbon that's inside of them with Shaylin, who's actually selecting these barrels, the complexity of these barrels that she finds. You know, if I went out and selected the barrels, they'd probably all taste the same. With Shaylin, she's able to go out and find 12 really distinct, unique barrels. Like, you can tell they're related, but like they're all distant cousins. So you're not just buying like 12 bottles that are like, oh, these are all the same. Great. You know, I had this one and this one tastes like the next one. one is a redhead, one's a blonde, and the next one is bald like us, and it's really just it's fun to be able to compare and contrast. So we'll have more of that coming. But the thing that we're working toward that hopefully is coming in around 2025 is shedding that NDP status and shifting into a DSP.
That's awesome.
Right. So it's really, really exciting. It's really big news. It's nothing we ever expected. This was not part of the plan.
Is this going to make you move from LA?
It's going to have me spending a lot more time. So my daughter is 12. She is in 6th grade. And that is a very, very difficult time to pack up and move. That said, there's one direct flight from LA to SDF in Louisville. And I'm going to be spending a lot of time on that, which is exciting. I mean, we're going to be building the future. The thing I can tell you is that much like our bottle, how distinctive it is, the facility we're building will be equally as distinct.
Please tell me the visitor center is going to look like a big butterfly, like just the whole thing. Like the offices are up on the wing, higher up at the bottom floor. Like one wing is going to be the tasting room and all that. And the other wing is going to be the shop. There
will be some surprises, and I imagine that later this year we'll be sharing some of the early visions for what the distillery will look like. It's not going to look like most of the distilleries out there. It's not going to feel like most of the distilleries out there. And that's on purpose, right? That's part of the goal, is that our distillery needs to feel no different than our bottle looks. If we're going to stand out on a shelf, we need to stand out in terms of the facility that we're building. It needs to be welcoming. I often make the joke that with our architects that we want to build a shrine, but we don't want it to feel like that house you go to that has all the white furniture, and you walk in and you're like, am I allowed to sit here? Is this sitting furniture, or is this just for looks? And so it needs to really feel welcoming and inviting at the same time, and not overwhelming, or not like, am I allowed to be here? Am I allowed to do this? We want everybody to show up. We want them to be there all the time. We're going to do some really cool stuff. It's not just going to look cool. It's going to feel cool.
If that's the case, then make sure there's food. Just throwing that out there as an idea. I think that the best distilleries have found a way to have a restaurant there too.
Yeah, and I agree. We've done a lot of our growing up at Bardstown Bourbon Company.
Yeah.
We love the BBC folks. We love the BBC facility. They do things right. And so we've learned a lot from them, and they do food well. They do the experience well. And, we're trying to learn from and emulate the best, but put our own spin on it too. Right. Like, for Dad's Drinking Bourbon, right. We want people, we want your listeners to be able to show up and say, this feels like home.
Yeah. And that's why, as a fat guy, I need food. And then it feels like home. But I also think it's also why I've called multiple times your Bardstown Bourbon Company the Grand Central Station of bourbon, because you never know who's going to. Now, I think also, though, the wild card in there now is the bar at Willett has also kind of taken some of that too. But you never know who's going to be in either one of those places. And the food at Bardstown Bourbon Company is crazy. The special burger that they only do 10 of at Willett is crazy good too, by the way. If you haven't had it, it is to die for.
I've always been 11th in line. So.
Oh, it's so good. It really is. Like, the burger is so good there. But I think it's those places.
Speaking of, can I just point out really quickly? I think the best bacon that I've ever had in my life is on the burger at the Hotel Distill.
Really?
It's incredible. They do it like sous vide. It may be the best thing I've ever eaten in my entire life.
I am dying to go up. I haven't been to Bardstown in a minute, but I'm dying to go up now that the Motor Lodge is open and to Toogie's
Looks
table.
Really cool, doesn't it?
Yeah. And Sam, having left Bardstown and taking all that hospitality that she knows and going and applying that at the motor, like, I can't wait to go. But
it's going to be a lot of fun, right?
Oh,
you're
100%.
Right. It is the Grand Central Station, and that there need to be more Grand Central stations available to people.
Agreed.
Right. And so hang out. We're gonna there will be an ability to enjoy and to have experiences and not just show up, get ushered through a tasting and get out.
Maybe I'll need like axe throwing there, like some activity that people could do. No distillery has like an activity that once you go inside, there's something else there, like an arcade, like an adult arcade.
I think axe throwing, I wonder though, like, it seems like the insurance policy we'd have to take on for axe throwing could be.
I mean, I guess that's like the thing that people do now. I don't know, but like some activity, something there.
Do you remember when back in the day, it was Dixon. Dixon was going to do a roller coaster at Kentucky Owl.
Oh man, that would be. I mean, that place did look like an amusement park. That would have been crazy.
Unfortunately, that never got built. But that could have been, that would have been cool. I could not have a couple pours and hop on a roller coaster. I can't hop on a roller coaster with no pours.
Same. And I truly believe, I tell people, if there was a little fake steering wheel in front and you told me I was driving it, I'd be okay.
Totally different scene, right?
Yeah.
Right.
It's 100%. Like, you could tell me, like, listen, we're putting you in this special seat. You have the wheel. You're driving the roller coaster. Like, don't tell me anything else. I'd be fine. But it is.
That click, 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 click is not going to bother me as we're going up and about to crest, right? I feel you. I feel the exact same way. I struggle.
I'm the guy that's great. I will hold the line for everybody else in the family. And like, I will sit there and wait while you go on another line. And then I'll hold all your stuff while you go on this one. It's okay. Like, I'm fine with it. I just know it's not for me.
Well, I think every family needs a caddy like that.
I like the way you put that.
I'm happy to be that caddy as well. Well, right? You're going to need this club to ride on it, to hop on this ride. And I'm not going to be there, but I'm going to guide you along the way. And then I hope you enjoy it.
I have the yardage book in my back pocket for the amusement park, but Mike, we're going to have to do this again. I know. I feel bad. We're in such a stride, but I know you got to put the kids to bed. I know you're solo dad tonight. You are a dad drinking bourbon, a dad making bourbon. We love Blue Run, everything you've done. It has been so good to talk to you. I'm wishing you all the best, and there's going to be awesome things to come, but please come on, keep us updated throughout the way. I can't wait for us to share a pour in person and all that fun stuff, because I feel like I got a new good friend tonight. So thank you very much, Mike, again for coming on.
Well, thank you. And John, I will be here as often as you'll allow me.
100%. We'll do it. We'll do it every couple of months. Go to Blue Run.
I might be your third co-host. I mean, it's like, is there an application process for this? Because I want in.
Oh no, you're in. Zeke doesn't do it half the time. So whenever you want, you could fill in, interview other brands with me. It's all good.
I love it. I really do appreciate it though. And seriously, we joked about this earlier. I call this like the big leagues, but I have always wanted to join you. I think the content that you create is fantastic. It speaks to me, as it should, as a dad who drinks bourbon. Right. But it speaks to me in a way that you should be very, very proud of. And so thank you for letting me be a small part of your world.
No, you're a big part of it now, but thank you so much for saying that. And we've definitely been fans of everything you've done, and that's why we've wanted you on, because when you see brands doing it in the right way, it speaks to us as well. So Mutual Admiration Society is how we're going to go out of this show.
I love it.
And thank you so much again, Mike. Go ahead and go to bluerunspirits.com. They are on all the socials with Blue Run. Very active on Instagram. I think you're on as Ella's dad, Mike, right?
I am Ella's dad, Mike. Give me a follow. Send me a message. I think that pretty much all of my followers can attest to the fact that if you hit me up, I will respond. We'll have a conversation. I'll get to know you. You'll get to know me, and it'll be pretty awesome.
Mike, thank you again. Go ahead and find us on Facebook at Dad's Drinking Bourbon, Twitter at Bourbon Dads, Instagram at Dad's Drinking Bourbon. Please leave us an open and honest review, just like we leave open and honest reviews about the whiskey we drink. You can also find us here in Nashville, Tennessee. Cheers, Mike.
Thank you.